tell you what, we'll get started, but we're buying a little bit of time. We'll do a quick icebreaker, maybe I'll give them another minute or two to show up, but then we're gonna jump in and tackle this thing, okay? You guys ready for that? So, you know, we just had July 4th, even though, if you can imagine, it's almost been 2 weeks, really. And it seems like every July 4th, we end up sharing the same story about something that happened on some July 4th, some previous July 4th, you know, memory that always comes back first. So, do you have a July 4th memory? And if not, what is your favorite way to spend July?
So I'll start with a memory.
All right.
So and you can relate, I'm usually the fireworks guy in my still friends. And my brother-in-law lives in South Carolina, so it's legal. And everybody will bring in a box of stuff. And I'm also closetly OCD when it comes to certain things. So I have to organize things because the tubes are the different sizes. So one year I was really meticulous and laid everything out. Didn't think it over really well. And all my tubes and all the just laid out. Sparkler pool tube.
I knew that's where that was going.
So my 30-minute show where I had it all organized out went up in about 10 minutes.
That's where you're going to
And I was running.
Now, do you bring that up every July 4th, or did someone bring that up?
Somebody has a video of it.
They share it every July 4th.
Yep.
All right, good one. Good.
That is crazy.
Yep. Somebody that I think actually put good sound to it.
It's, for some reason, things happen on July 4th like that, right? Yeah, we've spent a lot of July 4th just walking down the street, or in some cases driving. We had people with us that couldn't walk, but going down to the Peninsula Club fireworks. You guys have been there to see those stuff. Maybe some of you guys had the same experience. It was, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, maybe longer actually. But we were out there, we're waiting for the fireworks to start. We're on the side. We're sitting basically on top of one of the greens and waiting, you know, and we were like, when is this thing gonna start? And oh, it's gonna start at 9:30 or whatever, 49. And you can see this giant rain cloud coming, right? And we were like, oh man, they just need to hurry up and launch it. Can't they see the guy go? So they started the fireworks, you know, great fireworks as usual. And then you could hear people screaming from down the green, you know, like, you know, further down the hole, like literally people screaming. And then you can hear and see the wave of water coming. It was the hardest downpour I've ever seen. I mean, it was literally like a solid sheet of water. And everyone was screaming and running like back to their, you know, seats and grabbing their stuff. And you can see it coming. We grabbed it. I pushed my chair together. We all got everybody together. We had the kids grabbing their hands. Ran all the way back to the car to get in the car. Everyone lost their phone. The cell phones were dead. Everyone was, you know, great. I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh, my keys.
Where were they?
And my daughter was like, I saw a pair of keys when I was picking up and I grabbed them here. And so she was pretty young, you know, really. Luckily they were mine.
She grabbed them?
She grabbed them. Luckily they were mine.
I didn't get an upgrade on the car.
Yeah, I was hoping, I was looking for it. But it rained. And we always talk about, like, anytime there's a big storm or something, we compare it to that rainstorm. It was insane.
My July 4ths are lots of memories of being on Lake Norman.
Yeah.
Down at the Lake Norman area,
Mm-hmm.
Midway Bridge, which bridge was it? Yeah. But so many years, it would threaten rain or be lightning and thundering on the way back. And I didn't know until those years that I had an unreasonable fear of being struck by lightning. Just a completely off the charts fear. So I would spend all the time making our way back to the house in the boat, thinking, is this going to be my last day on this earth? And just so many years of that.
I don't really, I mean, I we do such different things. When I was married, my husband at the time, his mom had a house literally on the beach, in Atlantic Beach, and they shot fireworks off basically 4 houses down, right on the beach. It looked like you could just touch them, but then you had to watch out because then the stuff would start falling back on the houses.
Oh, wow.
So you're like, watch out, like it's live, so you're constantly like watching, but also kind of like in fear that something's gonna come on the house. And they're beautiful, but you know, the aftermath is always kind of crazy.
Park your car somewhere safe, right?
I'll tell you a funny story real quick, talking about, really bad storms. You know, last weekend, that really bad storm on Friday night. So, I don't know if anybody's watching Stranger Things. Yeah, my kids have got me into it. Anyways, it's this sci-fi show, right, about monsters and all this stuff. And it is like pouring down rain and lightning and everything. And I'm sitting there watching and you're like, oh my gosh. All of a sudden, the most god-awful sound comes through my wall. And I'm like, what in the world? I am like freaking out. I'm running outside in the pouring down rain to try and figure out, like, did something get struck or whatever? And you couldn't hear it outside, you could only hear it inside. So the entire night, I could not sleep thinking something was coming through my wall. Long story short, the next day I get up and figure out, I guess lightning struck my awning motor. It's a retractable awning. So it kept thinking it was trying to retract and come in, and it was the freakiest sound. It was crazy.
What about you, Becky?
My memory shot.
No? No? Wayne, I know you got a story. You got a story for everything.
My family just has a trip every Christmas and July 4th, we're at the beach. And we just do hot dogs at supper, hamburgers, homemade hamburgers at lunch. That's just what I always remember. And we did it again this year.
That's those traditions.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, let's jump in with what we got. There's no reason to do two, Bruce. So we'll all jump on one map. And sounds like we have some work to finish up from the last meeting. Is that right?
Yeah, the question that came up from the last meeting, because we were real quick at the end at looking at this section on Bailey Road, and everybody agreed, well, we just need to leave all that residential yellow. But then I had some people question, well, wait a minute, yellow is 2 units per acre, should we not be looking to lower that density?
Like 1.
Yeah, like 1.
2 acres.
And I think everybody was like, well, we ended so quickly, let's talk about that. Bless you.
So one thing we also have to talk about, John's not here, but he did give me instructions on, there was park needs for 2 parks in this sector, one in the green and one in the yellow. So we have to hold some space aside for that.
Now, the only other thing that I'll mention in this area that we've talked about, Susan, on this planning board, we've talked about extending this corporate campus area back to about here. And most folks on Bailey Road were okay with it. The only reason we didn't do it is because there were a couple of residents in here who said, no, I'm going to live here forever, and I don't want it. But the majority of people said, we would much rather have corporate campus than residential. But we've never pulled the trigger.
So a question on that.
Yes.
If you have a family that is of that mindset, and you zone it as something different, can they make changes to their own property? Can they bequeath it down to someone in there who can make changes to it, or are they beholden to the new?
Well, let me say this, and every town board can adopt whatever policy they choose to. The policy that we've had since I've been here is that we do not preemptively rezone anybody. If they don't want to be rezoned, we do not rezone them. The last time the town preemptively rezoned was way over here on Chartown. And the families just pitched a fit because they couldn't afford the taxes. So we ended up rezoning it back to rural preservation just so the taxes would go down. But the policy said that we wanted it as corporate business. And so they've all sold it for corporate business in the meantime. So a lot of these folks, they know we're not going to preemptively rezone them, but what they're concerned about is, well, what if my neighbor sells out? Do I want a business next to them? So that's what they're concerned about.
Well, and part of what we're doing is trying to communicate to the residents too, like they should not be caught off guard if we get in a situation where someone starts to apply for a rezone. You're gonna have developers see opportunities and fits and things, and, you know, the planning board will get a chance to say if it is or if it's not, so will the town board, but things will start trying to take a direction, so, if we plan something that way, then it is giving them a heads up before it gets zoned that way. Does that make sense? So that's part of our, you know, purpose is to give direction to the citizens as well as to the developers, as well as the town board.
So those two big gray areas, how many are we talking about in totality?
What was that?
The two big square gray areas, yeah, I lumped all those, like 5 properties together and that gray box above it. I think you said the other day that first one wants to be a cemetery.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, at this point, now here, this is Hodge HVAC right here.
Yes.
And that's set. Everything else is currently under contract, believe it or not. And this one is under contract for a cemetery. They're having, it's Jake Belillo, so Jake's having discussions now.
Maybe you want to funeral place for just him? Yes.
Well, believe it or not, and a lot of people laugh, but what Jake wants to do is offer it as a third stopping place for people in Vegas.
That's exactly
You
what
want
I
us
was
to
saying.
market it that way?
Yes, and he fully intends to do that.
One-stop shop.
Yep. You know, and if you live in Bailey's Glen or Bailey Forest, you get a break, you can have a plot for 10,000. Anybody else is 15,000. That's actually the going rate right now. Now, if you're in the mausoleum or if you're in the crypt, I think it's 6 or 8, something like that. But he realizes this is a money-making business. I talked to the tax office, it's valued about 40 to 60% of what a normal business would be, but it still pays taxes. The only time cemeteries don't pay taxes is when they're associated with the church. But if they're on their own, they're business enterprises. So, and we're trying to put an electric substation here. He said in his comment, I knew he was going to say this, my residents won't mind your the electric substation, so I'll be glad to give it to you.
Technically, it's a graveyard, because there's no church, right?
Yeah.
Cemetery.
Burial yard.
Yep.
A cemetery.
Now, this here is under contract for business flex space, and it'll look just like Hyde Park now.
Right.
I think my wife summed it up best when she said, well, y'all won't let him build up, so now he's gonna build down.
You know, from a planning standpoint, I've told other commissioners, I don't have an issue with the cemetery. It kind of meshes with the rural preservation, and it does pay taxes, it just doesn't pay, and part of the problem out here is we don't have sewer out here. So cemeteries actually work well with no sewer.
And there's a church just to the top of that, right? The light blue triangle, yeah, right there.
Yeah, this is the church property right here, that's a cemetery right there. This is Autumn Care and all the associated senior things that go with it.
So if that's gonna be Hyde Park down there at the bottom here, like Hyde Park, how are they gonna do that without sewer?
What they're banking on is this is owned by Gene Hunter. Gene is one of the descendants of all this. Gene says he's going to give an easement to him. Right here's the main Rocky River sewer line here.
Could you speak up a little, please?
The main Rocky River sewer line runs right here.
Okay.
This is the Potts Plantation, the King's Grant. For years, it was the family, Rod Wilson and his wife, and her sister, have said this will not develop. Well, I think there's one sister left. She's 96, 97, maybe something in that range. But the 2 children that will govern most of this, one is Gene Hunter, who is an asshole. And then his cousin is Jane Workman. Jane works for Bank of America, or not? Who? Wachovia, or Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
She's much more in tune with what's going on. Gene just wants his money now. So Gene has said that he will use his wherewithal to get a sewer easement up through here to the Rocky River. So these folks fully intend that they're going to have sewer by 2024. So that's why they're hired Susan Irvin, they're going through the rezoning process, fully intend to do flex space.
Is this another impetus to back that business, commercial, whatever you call it, back up into that space because it would also.
One of the reasons that we started looking at this is the residents out here did not want more residents. They were perfectly fine with low intensity industrial or commercial. So as this builds out down Bailey, what the Economic Development Commission said is, hey, we would really like the town to make that either industrial or corporate campus, because we've got small industrial that would love to look at that. And it's across from a school, it's across from a park.
Sure.
It's probably good for non-residential.
Right.
2-lane road with a major hill going over a railroad track.
Now, and I will say this again, a lot of people don't believe it, but non-residential creates a lot less trips than what residential does.
It's not the amount of trips, it's the size of the vehicles going down the road. I know, but school buses are doing it now,
Yep.
but the second we start throwing 18-wheelers, if possible, or big box trucks with heavily weighed down, it's just, I don't know.
We've made significant improvements to that intersection just this year.
Yep.
Now, this group here, they're doing their TIA now. If
There's power lines there too, right?
If there's additional improvements required, they'll be required to do it.
Okay.
This intersection functions extremely well right now, except for the school bus. And we've talked to CMS if we can get the school buses, because they're required to make a stop at the railroad track and the stoplight.
Correct.
It's the two stops, and when you've got 30 buses coming out there at one time, it clogs the whole thing.
Yep.
All right, guys.
So yeah, the only thing John had left was 2 park areas, one in the green, one in the yellow.
Where, so, the existing parks,
It's the light green.
Now, let me talk a little bit about the parks. We try to shy away from denoting parks because it impacts property value. And it's up to the town board to pick who they want to negotiate with, who they want to sell. We know there's a need for parks in this area. It's identified in the park master plan.
Yep.
I think it's okay if we make a statement in the land use plan, but I don't think we should identify the property.
Yeah, no, I don't think we should just pick that
Yeah.
somewhere in this boundary
There will be a
needs
park.
to exist, a 10-acre park or whatever.
I feel like the
Whatever it
green
says.
on the, like, to the left, all of that, is it all of that part?
That's all Bailey Road Park.
That's Bailey.
No, I'm sorry, I'm over to the left, further closer to 77. Yeah, like, do all of the green, does that,
And this is Caldwell Station Greenway.
okay.
And this is the green, the Caldwell Station tributary greenway that's being built right now. That will back up to the North Bend Rec Center.
Oh, okay.
Now, this, we've tried to negotiate with the family for a park. We believe that a majority of it will be a park. The family does not like Mecklenburg Parks and Rec. They refuse to talk to them. So what we've asked is Davidson Conservatory or Land Conservancy, they're talking to them.
Okay.
And what they will do is turn it over to somebody to make it parkland well used.
And that in total is 300 and some acres?
Yes, I believe.
About 500.
500.
500?
That's a big piece.
Yeah.
And where does it back up to? Okay, that's Smith Road, Smith
This is
Street,
Smith Road
okay.
right here.
So it backs up to Antiquity, kind of wraps around, or
What's
just
the
hits
yellow?
Antiquity at Lover's Lawn?
This yellow is owned by the Pines.
Got it,
This is Antiquity in the orange.
got it. Okay,
Now, a portion of that 500 acres is on the National Register, the old farmhouse.
Okay.
Which is
Just to
right
let you
here.
know.
And that implication is what? That means it will be preserved. Yeah. And
So that may
right
be.
now, there's so, just so we know, at least for the next couple of years, the commissioners, multiple commissioners sign on to not changing anything in the world of preservation to something else. So I expect that right there will be at least 3 votes for maintaining the world preservation. So just bear that in mind.
The two little yellow pieces on the left side of that, yeah, what are they? Are they existing?
I actually don't know what those are. I mean, I'm sure
The
they're out.
residential, right?
Yeah,
I thought the yellow was like the two,
yeah, it's 2 units per acre, but I have no idea why that is right there.
So what's the best way to denote that 10-acre park off of, Taylor?
I would suggest we just do it all right down here.
Yeah.
With the land use plan, of course, we show it as park area.
Well, not the actual Bailey Park, but the land you want to set aside that we don't.
Yeah, something in the yellow.
I think you just need to put it in text.
Yeah, just say somewhere in here, I mean, it's
In accordance with the adopted park master plan.
correct.
The town needs to pursue X amount of parkland within this area.
Yes. It's like an addendum, so at some point, if they're looking at property, they've got to figure out something's got to be taken for parkland.
So I guess the question for you, Becky, is how would you like us to mark that, so you guys?
I think, just like what we just said, we'll just make a note of it, and then
Okay.
in the very end, when you're making your recommendation, you'll have a map and you'll have text.
Okay.
And this will be in the text.
All right, good, so you guys have.
But yeah, so the yellow, back to your original, I know it's right now it's set at 2 per acre. Can we go the 1 per acre or 1 per 2 acre route to keep that as
Totally at your
treed as
discretion.
possible?
We can.
Now, if Hardy were here, and I won't speak for any one member, Hardy has never been in favor of the 2 per acre. Hardy says he and his neighbors prefer 1 or less.
And he lives down in this area, right?
Hardy lives right.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because he wants this gray box, and I was on board when he was talking about that big gray farm area. He wants that to be some kind of equestrian center.
Well, with this being, the next 4 to 7 years timeframe, 5 to 7 years timeframe, that might be a good move, right? I mean, there's a lot.
Well, equestrian does two things.
There's a lot of infrastructure. that
It
goes
keeps
down.
it rural,
Right.
and it satisfies the business side of it, because it's,
Well,
And there aren't any, I mean, there are no equestrian facilities anywhere. You either have to go to Huntersville or you have to go to Davidson.
Davidson, yeah, and I think that's attractive now, and if someone wants to buy it, now, one of the interesting things we had, consultant come out and talk to us, and this was very surprising to me, and Wayne, Becky, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what I seem to remember is them saying, in terms of, property values and taxes that we collected on those property values, there's not a major difference between whether we did, like, single-family homes or one homes on 2 acres or so on and so forth, because property value is going to follow.
Sure.
That was my understanding from her presentation. It wasn't the point she was trying to make, but it was just a point that I took from the presentation. And so I think that we could do that. I think that would be wise, and I
So
think
that-
it would capture a nice, attribute to the town that we have.
So would that be like residential equestrian? Is that what he was? I don't
Well,
recall him talking about.
equestrian, I think, is just an idea of
usage.
Of what how the land.
how it would be used, but I think, yeah, you're
It
just,
would stay in the gray, right?
And actually, we allow it in this residential as well, so it could be anywhere in here.
and we can always create, like, if we don't have an equestrian section, for instance, we
We'll
could.
call out equestrian to the ruling of what's acceptable in that bracket.
Right.
What I was just trying to, when I was asking, I guess I didn't ask it, right? So like residential equestrian meaning, like you will have individuals owning, like it could be subdivided or whatever to where it's like, one home on 4 acres or something like that,
But you could do that, or it could be a commercial equestrian. I mean, we allow either one to ask.
So if a developer wants to
That's
come
what
in
it-
and
that's what
develop it up as equestrian properties where they have, instead of a community pool, they have a community barn for their
Sure.
house. There's one of those over
And that's an interesting.
in
idea.
Huntersville, right off of 73. It's on a church road.
Yeah.
There.
We've got rural living, and you got large lot residential, for example, today.
So
So,
large lot has what? What's the?
well, we don't have it marked in here, I don't know if Wayne knows off the top of his head.
It can be anywhere from 1 acre up.
So the description of rural living is pretty interesting. So our rural living areas are located in the eastern extreme of the study area that this was done in. Many people choose to live in these places as a result of their connection to agriculture, proximity to natural areas for scenic views, or the enjoyment of living in a natural setting. So that sounds like what we're trying to preserve. That's called rural living.
Farmhouse cluster subdivision. That sounds like right in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of what you're looking for.
Because we're not gonna get scenic views.
So we'll take all of this here into the rural living category, and I think that was the concern last time, is that maybe leaving it yellow, that was too much.
What is the current
That's
density
major.
or DUA for
Rural.
dwellings per acre?
It's two per acre.
2 to
here.
1 right now?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you know,
What's it?
what
for
is
the
it in
rural?
rural living?
Up here, it's 1 house per 3 acres.
Okay.
One
So
for three.
what is
If
the
that is-
neighborhood on
is that
Mills
not
Road
different?
getting ready to be built?
Well, see, all of these are allowed under our rural category, but I would pose to you that 2 units per acre is not rural.
Right.
No.
I would say, and we're gonna come back, we can make notes on this. I would question,
Yeah.
we need to have the discussion, is 1 per 3 acres, or 3 acres enough? Or do you want larger for a question? Like,
Each horse
In
requires
Davidson-
at least an acre.
those homes in some of their question areas, is that 3 acres or is that 5 acre minimums?
I believe the minimum is 30.
It's minimum, so there's.
But on average, that's the reason I was kind of saying like 4 or whatever. I mean, on average, it's 4.
On average, it's about 4. Because that's gonna give, and how many acres total do we feel like that yellow area is? Would we guess in some of that orange
If
area?
that's 500 up there in the green, I'd say
Yeah,
we're
we
roughly
did a
around that.
calculation, this is around three something in this area.
Yep.
Yeah.
Plus another.
And the thing is, a lot of, like, this is all Bailey Forest, and it's not going backwards.
So,
But this over here,
Yep.
this is all open rural.
but we got one approved, flex coming in there, right?
Well, depends on the sewer.
Oh, that one's in, okay.
So do we want to create a new section in color question, or do we want to just pick up?
I'm good with the large lot residential, or whatever we were calling it, of rural living.
So that's, they're two different things, right?
Yeah, the rural living is the one I was meaning, it's just we need to establish what
How many?
minimum
What kind of density you
Right.
want.
correct.
And we don't have to do that.
What's the current DUA for a large lot?
We're
What's the
maintaining,
current for
2
large
per
lot?
acre.
2 per acre.
That's, okay. So that's considered large lot? Okay, was thinking that was, I'm getting confused on the colors, 'cause it's like these colors are the same.
Because
So
you got
the-
your other large
This-
lot up there where they're gonna,
So the pot, all of that land, what is that currently right now? Is it rural living or is it preserved
It
open
is.
space?
Preserved open space, and it's, now, we have to allow a certain density, we do that at one house per 3 acres.
So we have green on preserved and on rural living, the same green.
That's why I was saying I'm getting confused on the colors for that.
Well, they were, again, and I apologize for this, there were 2 different exercises. We liked the language in this one, but the math came out totally differently than what this
Yeah.
did.
So what we're saying is all the yellow and the little gray here and the orange?
Yeah. And that was what I had people expressing the most concern over, is that, you know, as crowded as Bailey Road is, because the orange goes up to 4 units per acre. And
So-
that was entirely too much for Bailey Road.
I'm gonna make a recommendation that we say for the yellow and orange area on the map, that we go with the rural living. And we can come back, if we are gonna come back to define densities and DUAs, right? Dwelling units per acre. But I'm gonna just put as a note here, what we talked about, is 3 to 5 acres per dwelling. Is that okay with everybody to do that for that area?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, cool, all right. Let's,
No, and I appreciate you saying we're gonna go back and revisit
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
density, because I think I was trying to marry them based on what they currently are, so.
Yeah, that's, I love what we're doing, I love the fact that we're kind of creating a vision now, we kind of understand, hey, we want this to be a little bit more open, it's not gonna be dense housing. But we could probably get into some pretty deep conversations to spend the rest of they talking about, whereas if we're kind of focused on that, we'll get in a groove of thinking of dwellings, and units per acres and density, so.
And so, Wayne, to go back to the other, real quick, I'm sorry. So what we were talking about, that part, kind of behind Hodges, that little area, the orange portion where we had talked
Oh,
about
right here,
changing all of that
cemeteries.
back to, or changing it
Or
to,
extending this.
Exactly.
The grade extend back to here.
yes. So do we want to do that and then have the, starting at that,
And then
Yeah.
have the rural living.
exactly.
All of this.
Right.
Because I think that would make sense.
Okay.
Okay. So, did you guys capture stuff on the map the last time, or do we do more of this way, what you guys
We've
said?
worked like this.
You guys like working like this instead of at the map, or?
Especially with the limited crew.
With the, yeah.
Okay, so we're good doing this, and then,
Do you have
Becky,
any
you're-
note on
yeah, I mean.
Yeah, what we'll do
What is-
is we'll bring back a map that actually has the colors on it at the next meeting, or whenever we go back and review all 4 quadrants.
Could I ask a question about Bailey straightening? Where will it actually come into 21?
Oh, okay. Go over here.
Right where the hospital. So if you're going
Yeah.
21 right now, you see the zoning sign just.
Yeah, good, like, right here's Grace Covenant. This is behind Grace Covenant, right here.
Okay,
The hospital owns all of this except for like 2 or 3.
got it.
So right here is where the new Bailey will come out. And this will be a signal and an entrance for the hospital.
Got it. So there will be a traffic signal there.
Right now, that's what we're talking about, DOT.
Okay.
Well, to the north of that signal is the new medical office building, right? The hospital itself will be still north of that.
Hospital will be right here.
So right across from like 131 Main.
Yes,
Okay. And then the flyover is just north of that at Westmoreland, is that correct?
oh, yes. Right now, that's a flyover.
And that is the proposed exit 27?
Yes.
Okay.
But now this is proposed as a new flyover right here.
It's connected to North Cross.
Yes. North Cross comes down like this. This will fly over, do a little circle, and come down and connect into North Cross.
Got it. I think as we're starting to, I mean, we're looking at the southwest, but moving into the northwest, I mean, northeast, southeast and moving into the northeast, I think it's important that we pay attention to sequencing of how road construction's done, how projects are done, so that we don't end up just in construction nightmare constantly for the next 20 years. Does the town think that's important, sequencing?
Well, we're trying our best, but we are in no way telling DOT to hold off on any project.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
totally with that.
Because if we tell them to hold off, the way things go with DOT, that could be 2-3 years. So
Right,
I think we'll be lucky if they start anything on time.
yeah.
Now, the good thing is the projects that are all starting in 2023, like North Cross is on new location. Nobody's going to see that.
And where exactly, show me where North Cross, where that is?
It will pick up at the end behind Alexander Chase, and it will come all the way down across here and pick up here at the North Cross and Huntersville. So while that's being constructed, that doesn't affect anyone.
Sure.
Hey, real quick, what were we calling that part, like where Hodges is, that whole gray area? What's that
Oh, it's
considered?
corporate office,
Corporate office.
Corporate campus or corporate office?
either one.
And will Bailey extension or Bailey straightening cross the greenway anywhere?
Yes.
And how will the town deal with that?
DOT is planning to build it over top of the Greenway.
Oh,
And they're working,
So a tunnel.
Yeah, Mecklenburg County will have a tunnel underneath Bailey Road.
and so the county gets involved in paying for things like that?
No, they're involved because they maintain it, but we own it, so we pay for it.
Bailey's Glen, what is that right now?
Maybe, this right here?
Yeah, just the darker orange than the
Yeah,
other.
it's 4 to 6 units per acre.
Yeah, that's the same in between the, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Multi-family neighborhood?
No,
That's small lot neighborhood.
yeah, small lot.
And we're going
Yeah.
to that in between the schools.
We talked about keeping that because of what exists out here. This was before me, so I can comment on it. I think Bailey's Glen was a mistake. I mean, it just doesn't fit out there. It shouldn't be out there. It doesn't fit rural preservation, but it's there.
You're not gonna tear it up or?
No. So that's one reason I think everybody said just leave it the way it is.
And I'm thinking more like the 5 parcels kind of in between the schools, like whatever
Yeah.
that is, I don't know what that is currently.
That's Bobby Mayhew.
Yeah, those are just how, they're like the ones across the street from that.
Now, we get requests periodically to rezone that. It wouldn't bother me if it went to rural living as well. I'm throwing my opinion in.
And the light blue is,
Light blue is civic, so that's all Huff, Bailey Middle,
uh,
all that stuff.
You know what, that will probably end up becoming something reasonable, and I'm not going to say this out loud. New elementary school.
I guess.
Perfect location for it, between the middle and high.
Yeah, I think with the traffic complaints they get out there, they're not looking at that at all.
I know, but I mean,
It makes sense with your.
right, because that's what they did down, Huntersville's got 4 schools back to each other.
Well, don't look for that to make, don't look for the decision to make sense. So they're looking for granted or given land, granted land in
Yeah.
existing schools and pushing new schools to the south and then bringing the population back down with it before they start. But I understand the concept would be nice and clean if you did that, for sure.
Well, and just to go back to where the cursor is, that was kind of where I was going with it, Wayne, is if we're changing all of that to rural living,
It should be rural living.
yeah.
I totally agree.
I would do that.
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
the small lot is 4 lots an acre.
This is, the small lot here is 4 to 6. But again, it is developed out. The only thing that is not here is a condo approval that's right here, and we're working with the developer on it right now. But it was approved back in November,
Condos facing,
115.
but with no access to 115?
No, railroad will not allow permanent access to 115.
So that's a real slope property there, isn't it, going down Bailey?
Well, Bailey is,
Okay.
but I think as you come south, it flattens out.
Yeah, this is all pretty flat property.
Okay.
What's the next section we want to look at? Are there any more decisions that we need to make over there?
That was the only thing that I was asked to revisit on that quadrant.
I have a question regarding the park situation. So if adding new parks or using parks as they are, to make sure that we revisit 2 areas that just keep coming up with people in my sphere. And one is the pickleball question, and then the other is what to do for teenagers. How do you create places for teens to have fun, skate park?
I can open up a fireworks facility and really
You could do it.
teach them off the bat how not to do it. No.
And not, the one thing I don't want to do is usurp, and our park board does a fabulous job. And they get into the nitty gritty of the types of park uses and like pickleball versus skate park and all that. I think from the land use section, all they want is our support to say parks and recreation is needed in this area.
Yep.
And then it's up to them to work with the town board on what type of park and recreation it is, whether it's pickleball. And they are, and Commissioner Osborne can vouch for this, pickleball is a heated discussion that's going on.
Well, there's some, if some of the things that are being talked about happen, then probably install them. We just don't know if they're gonna happen or not. So just keep watching, you know, you'll see the conversations coming up, but they, trust me, everybody knows, and tennis, tennis as well, like, don't, and pickleball I know is hot, but so is tennis, they're
Yes.
both extremely hot, so.
So when
It's-
people ask me about it, because I'm on the land use plan, that would be more directing them to parks.
Yeah, we're planning the park space to enable them to do what they're wanting to do, so. we-
Thought. Because it just made me think about when you were talking about park stuff, is since we're really trying to encourage types of equestrian type activities there, along that yellow section, does it behoove us to carve out some space for equestrian trails? Those folks like to ride, not just in a circle, they're not NASCAR. They don't want to meander through woods and streams and
Well,
stuff.
I would say, just like not designating particular property, if this group designates a trail, it impacts property values from a land use standpoint. What I think our role is you might, again, put in your text, just like you like greenway trails,
Correct.
note that you would like equestrian trails. And then we leave it to the park people to do the actual acquisition and design.
Got it. Perfect.
And where it should go.
I mean, because the equestrian trails are no different than a greenway trail, it's right, they're not paved. It's like a crushed asphalt or whatnot on it, so it goes easier on the hooves.
What was the text that you said for the park, like for that, like designate per
Per the adopted Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
And where John was reminding us that there are needs for two parks.
Yeah, what the
Will
parks.
the land be designated for parks?
Well, what happens is, and the reason you don't do this in land use plans, again, because we affect property values every time we designate something. So what happens is, if we note in the land use plan that it's a land use need, the park master plan says, okay, the land use plan says we need parks in this area. So the park board goes even a step further. They look at national trends based on population, distance from neighborhoods, and things of that nature. And they'll say, okay, in this area, yeah, we can do equestrian trails, we can do greenway trails. And then they put together a plan where they can go based on topo, based on, everything that's out here, route development, the whole 9 yards. See, like right now, they've already planned, the multi-use path is what's planned as the spine down Bailey Road. But the Plum Creek Trail is what connects over to Davidson. And then there's a trail that comes along here that's already been donated. So right now, the park board is looking at, well, how can we expand that into this area? And so what they'll do is they'll look at, well, can we do that through greenway, equestrian, and they'll try to do acquisition, they'll look at the whole 9 yards, how it's designed. That's just not something we do on the land use side, that's what they do on the park side.
What's so important about what we're doing is by having that then on the land use plan is the equivalent of equestrian type of land use. Now it might make sense for them to do equestrian trails. But if it was up there as, small out housing, it would never work.
They would never look at.
It would never work, so it's really important that we get the land use plan to support those visions that we have for equestrian trails or parks or, whatever, so it will support that. So it's really important that if we think parks need to go there, if we say we're gonna build it up with small lot residential, I'm not sure that's gonna happen because developers would take that small lot. I'm guessing developers would be like small lot and residential, absolutely, that's gone.
I've heard.
Right, so that's why we have to be careful, if we think we have that vision, what can we do to slow that type of development, so there's an opportunity for parks, right, to get their eyeballs on it and make sure it's a mesh with what we're trying to do.
So in the same vein of the pickleball, and I totally understand what you're saying there, when parents are saying our kids need more things to do, dedicated to, young adolescents and teens, how do we answer that from the land use plan?
I don't think we answer that. I think we just say there are recreational needs. And what the park board does is they work with the town board to prioritize programming of those needs. Now, team provision, there's a lot of partnership we have with County Park and Rec. For instance, there's a ton of stuff in Project Northback Recreation Center that we don't have to do because the county's doing it. So we look at that and say, well, these are things that the town will not get involved with because the county's doing that. But if there's deficiencies, that's where our park board will say, well, here's what we need to do, and we think the town should go after this property. And I'm gonna jump over here just to show you an example. You know, the park master plan identified that we needed a park in this area right here. Well, we went out and bought this land right here. So the town now owns this, and that's where the park will be.
Remind me exactly where that is. I know
This is
it's-
on,
One
Seth,
different boulevard.
yeah, right at One More.
Okay.
So there will be a neighborhood park there. The town also negotiated with Alexander Farm that we needed a park here. So we already had this land here, we'll join that together, which will be a nice neighborhood park right here. So that's kind of how that works. There's just so much more that goes into whether it's team, pickleball. Every entity thinks they're the most important at the moment. And right now, pickleball, they just think we haven't done enough. There's plans out there that we can convert tennis courts. Well, they don't like converted tennis courts. They want their own dedicated court. So there's just a lot because we just can't afford to do everything everybody wants. But those discussions are going on. But I think from our end, we just designate that there's a recreational need in this area, and then the park board picks it up from there and says, hey, the land use plan says there's a need here. We've identified that we need to do pickleball, or we've identified that we need to do equestrian. So we're gonna go after this property, we're gonna recommend the town board adopt this plan and go after this property. So that's how they partner with us.
And just, you know, I did reach out to parks as well, specifically asking about pickleball. Same concern that you have. They've been working on it, and there are ideas and things bigger than ideas. There's proposals and things out there that, you know, they haven't happened, but I think everyone would like to see them, so I don't think anyone's fighting it.
Yeah.
And everyone's aware of it, and everyone's in favor of it, as far as no one that I've come across is against it. So there's a lot of support for it from all the officials in Cornelius as well. It's how do we get the right solution. There's some great things I hope they happen. It'll solve the pickleball problems. And similarly, you know, with the kids, we can, you know, I'll just take what Wayne said, but I'll just spin it to what we can do. If, for example, Wayne, what would be the proper land use designation for the North Mac Rec Center?
The North Mac Rec Center as a civic use is actually allowed in every category. So that's why they went out and they picked this site right here, which is in the industrial category. And you know, because we have noted that government recreation facilities are allowed in every category, all they had to do is come ask the town board, are you okay with us using this industrial property? We said yes.
So that's kind of the answer then, right? So if it's allowed in every category, and if you flip through here, you'll see a lot of them have either like, a lot of them have community center as a subcategory, and as we get closer, when we add the details, not only the densities into the building heights and dwelling units per acre, we're gonna get to add primary land uses, and we're gonna get to add secondary land uses. So when we do that, we wanna make sure that we keep things like community center in our land use designations, and then that will continue to allow for them to, you know, give them a bigger area to pick from. And that's how we can impact the land use.
Do we want to add, in rural living, the uses portion of it, equestrian?
Well, we can,
Yeah.
and anything like that that comes up while we're doing this, let's get it, we'll get it
That's
on
what I
these
was
charts.
saying.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
Just because it does say small farmhouse, but it doesn't specify equestrian, so I think we should add that in.
Now, here again, we're using two different documents. That's the comprehensive plan document. In the current land use document, it says equestrian.
Oh, it does, okay.
So we actually did go ahead and
What
say,
do we have this merge or different documents that cover same?
it was decided this category, this group of categories was more in line with what we wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
But on the actual map, and we're finding out now, we just have to use both.
So as part of this, we're gonna condense it to
Yeah.
one singular.
We'll have our own land with the right colors and categories to match what we
So
come up with.
we're gonna go away from the
We're
two
pulling
separate-
from two totally different documents. The
Okay.
first one was a higher level document created by a similar group to us, except the fact that they were not citizen driven as much as, you know, they were by, you know, the economic development community. So they went out and, you know, I wasn't here when it happened, but, so I might be off a little bit, but my understanding basically is they probably hired some consultants to help them
Yeah.
with this. And, you know, the economic development community doesn't just represent Cornelius, but the area. And so with the consultants, with some citizen input, I'm sure, put some of these ideas and categories together. And I think as a whole, they capture some of the right ideas. So I said, Wayne, I like the approach of this in terms of some basic categories. I don't want to get hung up on it. I just want to give us something to talk about, like some starting point.
Something to go from.
Sure.
And then we had no plans on even showing you the existing land use map because we didn't want to get hung up on existing land use. But there was not a land use map per se to accompany these categories. This was just an idea of what categories would be when this was created. And so we're jumping between two different periods of time and we're jumping between two different documents with two different purposes.
And Michael's right, we had a consultant in 2014. This is the document that he provided us. I spent 6 months going through and erasing Congo, California out of it. That's why I hate consultants, because all they do is copy something else.
So the logs didn't help you?
But you'll see in the rural conservation, they added, it says open space and recreation, and then under the definition of recreation, it has equestrian facility. So that's in there.
Okay. And I captured it up here on the flip chart, so we have it. All right, cool. And that's perfect. That's what we'll do when we have an idea like that. Let's not lose it. Let's make sure we're
Yeah.
capturing it.
Building part, going back to what you had originally out there in a yellow section. There's a yellow section which is that 2 per, but yet there's a phase of Bailey's Glen in there that is 4 per or whatnot.
Sure is. Well, it's
Within the
actually,
yellow?
Yes.
but it's actually upwards of 6.
Yeah,
It's
it's,
in the orange.
yeah. No, it's in the yellow just below the orange, because there's a spot, I don't know, does Huntillis live out on that road over there? There's 2 big parcels in Davidson, really nice farmhouses, whatnot, but across the street is where Bailey's Glen is expanded out to.
Oh, that's, Tom lives over off 73.
Yeah, throw your map up, I'll show you the parcels. Yeah, they're right here. Because there's that road that comes down, there's a church right here. There's 2 big farmhouses right here. And Bailey's Glen is right here.
The only reason we know Kevin Violet is he's suing.
He's suing the town.
Yeah.
He is the most litigious person I've ever met.
I won't go to Red Rocks anymore because he has a state named after him.
Do you guys want to take a quick break right then before we jump into the next section, and then we'll come back and we'll start now. We'll jump in. All right. This is when I'm wishing I wore the right glasses to take a look at that. So,
And I'll zoom in. We talked about breaking this up into 4 categories. I'll jump into the biggest, most important one first. Talking about, this is town center. Again, I hate jumping to the land use plan, but this will help you see it a little bit better. Town center is the purple.
Okay.
This is the intersection right out here, 115 in Main. This is Town Hall, Police Department, Kane Center, Antiquity, Commercial. This is Antiquity Residential. Here's the Antiquity Greenway. This is Greenway Gardens, Old Mecklenburg. This is Caroline. And this comes all the way down just past the fire department. Well, actually, quite to the fire department. So that's the area we said we'd look at first. Now, a couple of historical things that I'll point out to you, and I'll let you start your discussion. So development that's been approved in the area, of course, the Kane Center, which is, you can see right across the street from us. Big building, 450-seat theater. One of the big concerns is, well, do we have enough parking? And there's a lot of businesses around here that are concerned, and so we're thinking about that. There's also concerned about traffic at this intersection, not only from what we have, but what we've approved with Greenway Gardens and Caroline. Now, one thing I will say is that the town has hired Kimley Horn to look at the traffic in this whole area because none of us want town center to stop. But what we found out with Greenway and Caroline is when we add everything that they originally requested, this intersection failed. And our code says we cannot have failing intersections. So they had to back down. But what Kimley Horn has figured out is it only failed in this direction. It did not fail in this direction. So we could actually keep going on this side. Now, one thing that I do want to show you, this is what we call the downtown block plan. This is a small area land use plan that we adopted going all the way back to 1996 on how we wanted the town to develop. Now, this is hard to see, but you zoom in a little bit. But this goes into planning what each building should be. So like when we just did the venue here recently, it laid out where it thought every building should go from Oak Street to, but one thing you'll notice is this was not considered town center back then. So they did not even look at where the Kane Center and the police department was. That's something we need to do now.
Wait,
They didn't.
can you point to where we are?
Here's town hall right here.
Okay, got it.
Here's police department. This is Kane Center.
Okay.
This is Antiquity Commercial. Back then, it was not considered part of town center. Antiquity was approved in 1991, well before we had current plans we have today. But you'll notice each building, building A, they planned out what the square footage should be, 4 stories, 4 stories. There's language in here that maybe you can go to 5 or 6 if parking's available. They plan for a parking deck. We're still talking about where a parking deck might go. I don't think it'll go here, which was the original discussion, but it might be somewhere over here. But we're talking about that. And then
Can I share something on parking decks real quick?
Yes.
One of the things that I learned, and I don't remember the number, but parking is extremely expensive.
Yes.
And so I just, and so, you know, one thought when I think of with parking is it's extremely expensive. And the reason that I bring that up is because I think, you know, the town is open for public-private investment. What will that look like? And by that, I mean, are there interested companies out there that would like the land use plan that we put in place here, that would like to develop, that could include as part of their development a parking deck that we might help invest in, or, you know, however you want to look at that, but help make sure that parking that we're looking for uptown happens.
When you say expensive, you mean expensive to build?
Expensive to build.
Yes.
Expensive to build.
Very, very.
In fact, I can tell you that logically, like, it's really hard to even pull the trigger on it. I mean, it's just really expensive. I mean, what is it per spot? I remember you guys.
Pre-pandemic, we brought in a consultant, we were at $25,000 per space.
Everything's up in.
Post-pandemic, yes.
It's probably 40,000 now, 35,000. I mean, things have gotten really expensive. We've had projects go up significantly for sure. So call it 30 if you wanted to be conservative, right? Per space.
So, but it still has to be addressed.
But it has,
It's
no.
like,
Well,
okay.
no, that's why I'm saying, I'm letting you know, this is,
Sure.
so that's why we started having those conversations with public-private investment to lighten the
Sure.
impact to the town budget. So as we're thinking, you know, about attracting, you know, the type of development we want, we might want some help with parking, and maybe we identify where we want parking. So where would, you know, we have to think about it, what would attract that type of, and what do we want, like, the downtown city area to look like, where it's gonna need the most parking, or where it's gonna have the most parking available.
So question, we're building Kane, we all agree that it's gonna be beautiful and whatnot. 450 people seat, what kind of parking was required to be alongside that project?
Well, our current ordinance, and a lot of cities have done this, we don't have parking standards in them. So what you do is you approve, and then you let the market control blue moon, the public has to step in. And this is a situation, as Commissioner Osborne has noted, we've got to step in, and we need to look at partnerships, because the private sector needs the parking as much as we need the parking. So, we did a study that shows there is public parking available, and it's within a half a mile, and people can park it. It's just that it's the perception. And the consultant, when they talked to us, they said it's just like Walmart. Walmart might build 5 spaces per 1,000, but nobody wants to park at that last space way out there, and they don't want to walk. They'll drive around 10 times to get the second or third space at the door. Well, they're gonna do the same thing here, because our study showed, well, we have parking in Cornelius Elementary. We added the temporary parking in front of the library. We got the on-street parking. We got all this parking over here in front of Food Lion. But people who show up at Kane Center in high heels and tuxes or coats and ties, they don't want to walk back. On a night like tonight, I'm not going to get sweaty walking half a mile. So what Kane's doing is, to start with, most of it is going to be valet. They're going to hire people to park out. We're going to work with them on a parking plan of how people get their cars and leave, and how all that works. But for the long term, we need that. We've got to have some kind of structured parking. And as Michael said, and I'm going to refer to this real quick and I'll jump back, we did a vision, because a lot of times when you put stuff in writing, people can't see it. So this is the vision that was painted in here's Town Hall, that it would be 4 to 6 stories along 115, here's the fire department. But let me jump back to the map. So this half-mile radius, they're going to valet it using Cornelius Elementary, the library, Town Hall, and they're confident that for the first year or so they can do that, and people will pay for it. But long-term, we're all trying to figure out, well, where can a deck go? Well, as you know, Gordon Cash and his partners own all this property right here adjacent to the Kane Center. So,
Where is it? They own-
this is Meridian Street. They
Oh, yeah.
own
Right by OCPH.
right beside Old Town Public House and all to the corner of Meridian. So they have a developer, they're talking to us. And that developer's saying, well, we'll build a parking deck, but we'd like some density. So he's trying to negotiate with us. Right now, what he says, I want to wait until the Growth Management Committee figures out what y'all would like, and then I'll come back and talk to you. And I actually appreciate that. I appreciate that he's waiting until we're done.
What happens with Cashin's, at the corner?
It's not part of this.
Oh, I understand, you just brought up, what, I mean, when you're looking at the plan,
Someday it will go and it will be another building. That Cashins loses money like you wouldn't believe, but his mother promised people that they would not tear it down as long as she was alive, because that's where the tree of knowledge was, that's where people gathered. There's still a lot of old men that gather over there.
oh,
So she's promised it will not be torn down as long as she's alive. Now, what Gordon will tell you is once Mama passes, it will probably go to somebody else, and it will be something else.
and how old's Mom?
She's not that old, I think she's only in her 80s,
Yeah, she's like mid to late 80s.
which I don't consider that old.
I wouldn't even say, probably mid at the
At most.
And
Yeah.
she's still very,
scratch.
yeah, she runs the family.
She
tells
is the
Gordon-
matriarch, for
Is
sure.
that Louise?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's gonna be a statue for the Cashins out front, because they paid for it. So that's how they're gonna be recognized for what they gave to the Kane Center. And there's so much more they've done for the community.
Sure.
One thing I think is really interesting about what you showed us, Wayne, is if you don't see the images you provided with the buildup on 115, or was that, yeah, right there? The development they is oriented on 115 and not Catawba. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but me mentally, it's, for some reason, I don't naturally think of it that way. I naturally think of town center, and I think of what does it look like when you drive down Catawba Avenue. I expect that the reason that they did this, and it makes perfect sense, is because you have so much more room on 115 for, you know, in Wayne. I don't know if there's, how much talk there's been of expanding, but there is, 115 is a much larger roadway area than what Catawba will ever be.
That's correct.
And it looks different than the way I conceptualize it. It's like looking at things backwards when I see that, but I think it's the right way because, well, you know, I'm not saying we can't do anything on Catawba Avenue, but we want to be surgical on Catawba Avenue when we pick things. And then get the traffic on 115 so we can route the traffic north-south on 115 and then cross over to 77 or to 21 to move the traffic, right? And I think that's why this has been built out the way they did it here as opposed to having the same buildings on Catawba Avenue.
Well, I know,
Catawba's
we're
small.
probably not talking about 115 and all of that right now, we're right in the town center.
Well, the thing with 115, we did have a master plan done for the traffic on 115. It is scheduled to be wide.
Is that approved by the DOT?
It is, but it's not funded by the DOT.
Okay, approved but not funded.
Yes, when it's approved and not funded, that means we're 10 years away.
Okay, that's good to know.
So 115 is supposed to go from 2 plus 1 to 4 plus 1?
115 will be a 3-lane cross section. And right now, what DOT says causes most of the clogs is people trying to turn, and whether it be Hickory Street, Washington Potts,
Yeah.
whatever. So the 3-lane cross section will allow people who are turning to get out of the straight lanes. And that, they say that will keep traffic moving. So that's what DOT has accepted as a 3-lane cross section.
So they're adding half a lane, the whole length,
Yeah.
A whole lane on each side.
all the
Well,
way to the green.
not only that, but there'll be the 10-foot multi-use path on the west side, 5-foot sidewalk on the east side, 5-foot bike lanes on each side as well. So their goal is to improve the appearance and to improve travel time as well.
And are you currently talking about from the roundabout of the Y to?
Washington.
South?
Well, actually, it goes all the way to Hunter. We got 2 plans, one for the south, one for the north, but they match each other.
Okay, and is the town, again, sequencing and how
Well,
things start rolling?
There's no real sequencing on the dates because it's unfunded. We're just in the process of begging for money. And we'll do that for the next 5 years. It'll take us 5 years to get funded.
But the
It won't be
begging for
done
money
until
is for the
it's
entire
all-
thing, not segments, or?
No, it's broken into segment, Washington Potts to Davidson and Washington Potts to Hunter.
So Washington Ponds.
Washington Potts is the breaking point.
And they keep changing the dates.
Davidson
telling us
Railroad
on everything they have
Bridge
dated.
part of it, or is it?
Yeah, I
end
noticed
of
that.
there?
Even
It's
if
actually not part of it because the Davidson Railroad Bridge, well, first of all, the Davidson Railroad Bridge is not scheduled to be replaced at all. CSX
So
controls
it's
that.
going from 3 to 2 no matter what, that's fine.
Now, the thing is,
Great.
at the Davidson
I wish we
Railroad
could do
Bridge,
that,
because
too.
it's past the roundabout project
And
governs
like what
that.
Wayne was saying, if we ask them to change.
What the
something or
DOT
something
says
else,
is because we're breaking
they-
that off
they may
into
push
2
it.
routes.
They may never.
Potts Bay
So when they
Slope
say they're gonna dig.
and 115, there's enough capacity in both those routes to handle what the 3-lane section.
Even if it happens at the
south.
same time as something else, or else you just may not get it.
You know what I'm trying to visualize in my head.
The positive about the railroad, even though it's not being replaced, is that the roundabout project changes the angle of 115, and we're getting bike and ed that we don't have right now.
Yep.
Yep, and if you look at Catawba Avenue, for instance, it'll never be wide. Like I can,
Can't.
like you can't.
Could it have wider sidewalks?
Only if we remove the parking.
Only if we remove the parking, so we can't encroach.
Look how they have the cane center. Look how
But it's
that's
like
fronted
right on.
right over, the overhang is literally over Catawba Avenue.
Sure. But I'm talking about going out to what will be the entrance into this town center from 77. Are we looking to create more walkability out to that, to 77?
I don't think that's gonna change. You can see we've got the brick pavers and the sidewalk on Catawba.
Okay.
It's pretty wide. I've ridden my
Okay.
bike down it
Yeah.
all the way. That's not a,
And I think the land use going out this way, and the land use we're talking about on Main Street and on Catawba, I know that's the next section we're gonna get to, is trying to keep the single-family look,
Yeah.
but even though these are all businesses.
business, yeah. I love that look.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's
I
a
like
great,
that too.
we get more compliments for how Catawba looks
Yep.
than we do
I
anything.
bet. yeah.
But it cannot be widened.
Right.
And because of that, like I said, I do believe we have to be very surgical on where we add and what we add.
Yeah.
And that's okay if we decide to do that, but it's gonna have to be limited, for sure.
And Wayne, did you say that from Washington to Davidson, that you're looking at 10-foot sidewalks on the west side and 5 foot on the east side?
That's correct.
Okay, that is just part of the plan or not what you'd like to see?
And that is part of the adopted plan.
Okay. And then,
The only way to add more walkability or whatnot in those areas is to take the parking off the street, which I wouldn't be against, but we've got to put those cars
We need it,
someplace
yeah.
to give them a place to park.
Where are you talking about there?
Right,
Just on-
right in front of the Kane Center, the Husky, literally across the street.
Yeah, the plan there is, because it's town center, we don't want to take away on the street.
Correct.
Sure.
That's a good downtown thing.
yeah,
But now, the plan here is that from 115 all the way to School Street, this is gonna all be redone to what's called Festival Street.
Yeah.
We're changing the drainage pattern, we're changing, this is all gonna be a brick, street. There'll be bollards, we'll control how the on-street parking works, but it'll allow this to be closed off for festivals in conjunction with the King Center. and things of that nature.
right, that's nice.
Yeah.
So, can we park, can Kane Center use Food Line parking lot?
No, Food Line has told us to stay away from it.
It's a very big parking.
And it's huge.
Can they use the town center
Yes.
parking lot?
And we're currently negotiating with them,
Them being
Because-
Food Line?
no King Center.
Okay.
Because when they sell tickets, they're gonna sell parking tickets. So if you buy a ticket to a show, you might pay $5 more, and you will get space 7, which might be right here. But it'll be valet. So you pull up, show your ticket, and I have space 7, valet will bring it over here and park it here.
Where will valet go? Because that's pretty, that's gonna be a pretty big operation.
It will be, they're gonna hire a private company to do that, and they're gonna utilize most all of town hall parking, and you might see that this is under construction now, for parking up here in front of Food Line. So we're probably gonna enter into a contract with Kane that they can valet all of that. And they're also working with Steve Knox over at, the mill back here to use his parking.
I was here, I didn't ask them.
Actually, it's over here.
Are there, restaurants being courted to come into this area? If so, what kind of restaurants?
Yeah, we've got at least 5 or 6 that are waiting in the wings. I know there will be one in the Mark Miller development that he's talked to you about.
Venue.
The venue will have one equivalent to Ruth Chris. It will be right here.
Okay, where is right here?
Well, here's Cash's, here's the 115
So
main
that's
intersection.
Mama's, is that where Mama's
Oh, Mama.
coming?
Mama's is right here,
The red, was it Mama's the red room? No?
It is,
right there. So here's the venue. It'll be a 5-story restaurant, commercial on the bottom, apartments on top. Right here's the new coffee shop. Have you been to that? It's very good.
right.
Willowwood? It's good.
But
I haven't been yet.
it's very good.
Yeah.
I don't know the
I
name.
think it's Willowwood.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
she's local, and she's very nice.
Okay.
So venue is a 5-story, it's got, and it'll have a restaurant.
Yes. Now, we've also talked, Fairfield Patrick Vermillion will probably make the bid to the town to develop the town property. They have what they're saying is a 5-star steakhouse they would like to get right here on the corner. They would like to develop this to look similar to the building that you're in Davis.
Like flat.
Flat.
It's the
Yeah, it's a
stone
perfect flat iron.
Where do
It
they
is.
plan on, are we gonna ask any of these folks to add parking? to their
Well,
plan?
they have said that there's some space on these lots that they can add some parking back here under the building and, town property as well. But they would also like the right to use town parking. Now, again, we're in the very early stages.
Yeah.
A deck or multiple decks could be here. One thing that we're talking about, and please don't go out and repeat this, but we had originally talked about a deck here, but that would just destroy how this is beautiful back here.
Sure.
But we own this, so we're talking about a deck right here. The people in the live work are afraid as all get out, but
Sure.
actually it can benefit them. What they're afraid of is, where am I gonna park? But we could accommodate them in a deck back here, and all the developers like that deck because it's not that far away. So those are multiple options that we have that we can work with, and that we're, the developer here is thinking, well, I might be willing to put in 70% if the town and other people could help me with 30%.
Sure, yeah.
That's what we're looking for, right? Because it's so expensive to do. It becomes prohibitive, so.
How about making what ideas are there from the town for making it walkable from over in the antiquity area up to Kane Center, for instance?
Well, it's part of the 115 plan. We talked to DOT because this is not a very walkable intersection.
Correct.
But DOT's got to get on board with it. What DOT's telling us now is, okay, if the 115 plan is 10 to 12 years out, we need to look at a separate project for mobility right here. I mentioned that the town's hired Kinley Horn to revisit this entire area to make sure we're okay if we consider additional development over here. Kinley Horn's going to look at this mobility of this intersection and make recommendations for it, and then we can coordinate that with DOT, figure out if we want to prioritize that and pay for it.
Does the fact that you've hired a new TIA company and they're saying that that intersection would fail on this side, not on the west side of East Catawba, that seems pretty important.
It is. I think it's critical to all of our decision making, here
Exactly.
in town board as well.
And so how does that affect, assuming there were no sewer issues and all of that over where OMB and all that may go, how does that affect any of that? Are we still under the NCDOT, this road has to connect here, and we're still under all that?
Not unless somebody brings a new plan and does something different. I have no idea what they're doing.
So it seems like a meeting or two ago, you were gonna be meeting with John, what's his name? Marino.
And I think he's just created more rumors because he backed out. It was the Chamber's Economic Development podcast. And at the last minute, he sent a note and said, I apologize, I can't make it. And so now everybody in the chamber's like, oh God, what's going on? Because nobody's hearing from him. He's not talking to anybody. So nobody knows anything. The mayor reached out to Susan Urban, who represented him, and Susan has not responded. So we don't know. He's not talking to us.
That's not a good sign.
It's not.
Yeah.
Or 203.
I'm like, this is not my group.
203?
Yes, ma'am, right next door.
Join us, we're better.
So is there potential for parking over, over in the antiquity area, like in the, just north of where your cursor is?
There is, but I tell you, nobody's really looking at that because of the negative walkability of 115. Now, there will be people that will park over there.
So is Food Line planning on towing people that are parking there for King?
I don't know what they're gonna do, but they get very angry, and the developer has put us on notice. they get angry at the top of all.
Sure.
But, you know, Justin Dion, who's the executive director at Kane, he's trying to keep as positive relationship as he can. He's meeting with the Food Line owner, he's meeting with Food Line, and he's trying to explain what they're doing to handle parking, so we can keep Food Line off our back. Our main thing is, that's the number 4 producing food line in their entire system.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
the way, I know a lot of people don't know that, but
I
what
was
we.
just gonna say, does anybody go to Food Line?
Yes.
Clearly they do.
Yes.
Yes. What we don't want, what the developer doesn't want, is it's in their contract, if any little thing makes them mad, they can walk. And we don't want that, because if they walk, that's big lots.
It's a big lots.
We just don't want that.
All right, so
What do you mean, it wouldn't be a Fritz food?
So Wayne, if you'll flash back to the specific area, I mean, I think, you know, our challenge now, you know, we recognize parking is an issue, and we want walkability. How do we impact that with the land use development plan, right? So,
Well, so, look, not to interrupt fully, I'm just, right now, we have it on the government center or whatever, right?
Or towns.
Town
Town
center.
center. I don't think we plan on changing that zoning capabilities, right?
we can say whatever we want, probably not for that section, but the other thing that we have to get to is defining
Well,
densities
those-
and story heights.
Correct.
So
Yes.
we need to make those decisions, even if they seem like inconsequential decisions, it's fine, we can make them, but we have to do that so we can go on,
Correct.
you know, so we get to that. So,
We have an immediate need, the building that the roof fell through on.
Well,
They're
exactly.
gonna wanna do something on,
right.
Which
So,
one?
right next to.
IOTPH over there.
Right, literally right next to the
You
Kane
see
Center.
the chicken wire over here.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
That's right next to
Gordon's
it.
building.
Is it next to Potts or Old Town? That's
Right next to Old Town.
Right next to Old Town.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so it's
Okay.
blocked off. So there is gonna be a lot, like, I don't see us changing. Now, we could, so I'll give you an example, and this is where I do want to challenge us to think about these things. Like, when I look at the police station,
Yep.
I think, is that the best place for the police station? Or could that be a much more contributing space to our town as being something else?
So
And-
my first question back to that is, like Huntersville went through this problem. Their police station got too small for them
Right.
very quickly.
Yep,
What is the state of affairs of our police force and the building size they have currently?
they're kind of packed, and they probably wouldn't mind more space.
Okay, so they're going to be wanting or searching for a larger facility or a second facility, something on a different side of town or whatnot to improve response time at some point here in the near short
I
future.
haven't had that conversation with them, but I think they would be open to it based on the tour that I did with them and seeing how.
And we have pieces of land that could be less expensive for them to take ownership of and build out in.
Right.
And this land would be prime for a downtown development type building with attached parking.
Exactly. And that's where I wanted to challenge us, just because it's, like, we might want town hall here, but that might not be the best place for a police station. And I'll challenge us the same thing. It gets more complicated with the school, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't have the conversation as well, right? So, you know, that, we might not be able to touch that one for other reasons, but we might be able to, you know, put it out there and start the conversation, see if we don't change it in the land use plan, the conversation doesn't happen.
Correct.
You know, more, I mean, it might, but at least this way people can plan for it and it gets on their radar. And Wayne, I don't know, I mean, there's some good conversations I don't get to see, but have they had conversation about moving at all?
The elementary school?
No, the
Like,
police station?
No.
I don't think so, right?
But you're right, it's going to come up.
It's going to, so let's say, like, let's help them, right? Like, hey, we're gonna give them that vision of, guys, you know, what else could we use? Like you said, like, it's prime, right?
It is
And
really prime.
it
It's
is
a perfect spot for
you
a
know,
lot of different
For a
things.
lot of
It's got massive potentials for many different.
And if you just go a little bit further south on 115, for instance, there's gonna be some
This
space.
land out here is a lot cheaper
Exactly.
than this land.
Exactly. So, you know, we haven't had that conversation with them. I'd like to have that conversation with them. I would never want to kick them out, but it's not a matter of kicking them out or anything else. They don't have to move until they're ready to move or anything else, but we do have to start identifying where they're gonna go.
Correct. And
I think to be proactive with
Yes.
those conversations.
Yeah.
It is forward thinking, it is smart, it should happen today.
If we use that land that we just put it to, for example, or something else, then they don't have a place to put the police. It's not a matter of them wanting to leave here, it's a matter of them not being able to go somewhere else. So I love that you guys are, you know, willing to be bold with this and think, you know, outside of, just the way it is, because we have to.
Well, and it's hard because we need more schools, but it would be great if that school was not right there on this.
How much part of the traffic problem is that when they do school every morning, and everyone drives their kids and drops them off?
But it would mean.
I didn't know that's what you were looking for.
Yes, the town finding a place in the school.
I've got it,
And
it's like a
the
black
school
hole.
bill.
Here's,
Renovate.
Hermione Granger.
here's my thought on that. It's just to push the conversation is, it might even help with the building cost. If the land value here, which it is worth a lot more than what it is outside of town. And then the value of that land swap, that, you know, some of that can maybe be offset either with more parks or more land for the town, or for the building of the school, or something. I don't know how exactly it would need to come out, but there could be some additional benefits of making that switch right out of the middle of town.
Yeah.
Now, politically, I don't,
Well,
you know, I know.
the timing is actually good on the school because they have approached us in the last 30 days. They are starting, Cornelius Elementary will be in the next bond pack.
Right.
So they have reached out and said, okay, Cornelius, you tell us, do you want the school to stay here or do you want it somewhere else? And their only requirement is it has to stay in the attendance boundary. So it can't go further south than Washington Potts and Westmoreland, and it can't go farther north than the Cornelius boundary up here, because that's Davidson Elementary's boundary. So we've got to stay in this area right here.
And
Is there
Opportunities in them?
I have no idea because we have not done that search yet. I mean, we just got notified.
Wow.
The discussion that we're gonna have, we're actually meeting with them the next 2 weeks because the historic committee, which is meeting right next door, wants to use the ag building for the museum. Well, what the school says is, well, okay, if we're gonna use that for museum, we'll probably keep the school here. We'll probably build the school back here on the back, and then we'll enter into an agreement and let the town have ball fields, parking, and everything else on the front. But they said, hey, go ahead and start thinking, if you want us somewhere else, and there's a better use for this.
Here's the other challenge with the school being there right now, is what we need are more roads that go east-west through town. And right now, that school cuts through probably 6, 7 blocks of roads, where we could have more parallel roads running to Catawba.
My struggle with this adding to the grid to move people around to get out to 77, which is what we're trying to do, is that everybody still ends up right on 21, where there's no light or no light plan at Nanny Potts. There's nothing going on there. It's a 2-lane road. You're still going to end up right on the east side of 77, whether you're going out East Catawba or whether you're.
We got to fix it.
And I'll be honest, the second they put an exit at 27, a lot of that will be alleviated.
Yeah.
True story.
Oh,
Okay.
especially
There's
It'll
no
add-
way,
it'll add a whole
you
new
can't
dichotomy.
end on the west side of it because it's 77, so
Right.
that's just kind of.
It'll spread out the pain a bit, because we'll still have the pain between 28 and 27, so people will be doing the back roads to try to get a mile down the road, but it should alleviate some of that surface traffic through this small area.
Well, and it'll make people go, you know, 115 to Washington Potts, because in that way, you'll be able to get on 27 right there, as opposed to then having to go through downtown Cornelius on Catawba back to
The
27.
challenge with Catawba is it can only take so much capacity, no matter what we do, because it's 1 lane in, 1 lane out.
Yep.
So that will never change, but we can continue to try to make improvements to intersections. We can continue to have additional ramps on 20, you know, maybe at exit 27. So in my mind, what I think is we need to continue to provide alternate paths where we have bottlenecks that we can't fix.
Well,
We
it's
can
it's
fix.
not even the bottlenecks, it's the festival area, when you shut down this downtown, where
Or
we're
if you shut it down, or when you have an event. I mean, so in my mind, what I'm thinking, I would love more east-west if possible, right? And the school sits in the middle of that, right? So that's another benefit potentially of the school not being there. You know, I don't know how people feel about it. I haven't talked to a lot of residents about that idea, but to me, I think it makes sense to make that consideration. Wayne, are there any other pieces of property in that area that we could?
We haven't figured that out yet. What we ask is for CMS to provide us the zone boundary. And then we're gonna start a methodical search within that zone boundary to see what's available.
So while we're in here, it's okay because we're just setting guidance that if that school were gone, what else could we put here, right? And
There's
so,
a spot.
we
There's a
need,
spot for you,
we
Got the
need
spot?
to,
right off of Legion Street, there's a baseball field there right now.
Yep, that's true.
What is going in there? What's going on there?
There's a major stormwater issue, the pipe fell in, so we're fixing that now.
Okay. And the business at the top, the guy who, the tire doctor,
Yes.
that's all part of that?
No, he's actually fine. Now, I've heard through the grapevine, he would love to sell.
I thought he had sold it.
That'd be a perfect.
I think he just sold the business, not the property,
Or a
Oh,
police station.
yeah, which I'm happy for that because he's
It's
a
close
pain in the
enough to
ass.
town. Because the only other place I had in mind for a police station would be off hospital, like butting right on 21, right around the
that
hospital. property.
that would not be a horrible place to be for the police station.
Right
Because there's
center
gonna
of
be
the
a lot of activity.
whole, they have.
Talking about more in the where Atrium's going in?
Yeah,
Where what?
Adrian,
that's a pretty good spot logistically for them, I would think,
Yeah,
right?
central to the whole town, I can get to the
Where?
whole,
Is there
Somewhere
empty
blue.
space?
there's
So,
hundreds of acres up there,
If-
or 50 acres or whatnot, right?
Oh, you're talking about as a part of what Atrium's taking
It's
versus.
somewhere in that spot, because police stations are eminent domain type deals, right? Or
well, that
you're
would
bid
be
and you
with
buy or
Atrium.
whatnot, but,
Atrium's gonna get their spot.
correct.
Yeah.
yeah, Atrium, they want to negotiate with us, and they've broken this up in 3 phases. Second phase, which we will look at next week, will be the hospital. Third phase is the private part of it. And they're holding that out because they know we want civic facilities, whether it be fire department, and we haven't discussed police. But if we discuss some kind of public safety station here, their thing is, yeah, we'll negotiate with you, but we want density.
Sure.
That's what we're negotiating. We want second and third floor apartments, you want public safety, let's see where we fall. So,
Everything's
negotiation.
negotiation.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems to be a negotiation for sure. So that's good, though. I mean, conceptually, we need to make some space available then, right? If we're interested in doing this, we need to make some space available. And then, when we come back around, we may have an opportunity to adjust that based on their study. Any ideas on how long it's gonna take them to do a study of potential school locations?
I have no idea since we just started the conversation. The first step is they want to work with the historic people.
Right.
And evaluate whether the ag building even works as a museum.
Where's the ag building?
It's on the school site.
I'm surprised they're asking.
The reason it's being talked about is
Is that the
because,
green roof building? in the corner?
That's right here.
There, okay.
What is the ag building?
well, in the United States, and I forget what year it was, there were agricultural training buildings built on all school campuses. And so that was the one built here. There's one in Matthews, there's one in Mint Hill. And CMS is known for donating those for historic uses. The one in Matthews is their historic museum. The one in Huntersville, they're trying to do the same thing to make it a museum. So the historic group is working to see if they will let them use that. And so CMS is saying, well, if we're going to use that, we might keep a building here, but they're open. They're letting us make that call.
Well, what,
Is that School Street?
Yes, it is.
If the police building opened up, would that be a perfect place, like within the building, to have the museum?
It could be.
Easy, walkable, it's front and center,
It goes with the arts.
it goes with the arts. If you've been to the, it was was a church, I think, in Concord where they do all the music. There's an auditorium that's like 250 or 300. Has anybody been there?
I have not.
It is stunning.
Wow.
Where you walk in, there's a circular staircase that goes up. But what they've done with their main hall and all the offices, which were offices at one point to the sides, is each one is a business. And they may sell art, they may sell pottery or whatever, but it is really stunning.
Where is that?
Concord, I'll send you the name of it.
That'd be good, like to see that.
Yes.
Another place for the police department, Jake's Cemetery.
The thing about the police, and Hunters will figure this out, see, the Huntersville's police department is down in the no-ban part down.
Yep,
It can be anywhere,
correct.
because the police patrolling zones, that.
Well, and the police here don't have a jail
There's not
in
a
their
jail.
buildings, all that's downtown.
So
I would
I
think
mean,
it'd
it's
be more
just
of a
office
logistical.
space, pretty much.
They can pretty much be anywhere.
Correct.
I think
I'm
it's
just thinking
Harris
if-
County Arts.
The reason why I like on the 21 spot is it's central to,
That's
you
true.
know, every place in town is gonna be about the same drive time.
I think they would, and if that was a combined public safety station, if that was Fire Station 3 and a police department, that would be absolutely fabulous.
Do we really need a third fire station?
Not now, but
I mean, I know that was Jim Duke's big,
the only thing I think from
Charging
a
the
management
bill for it.
standpoint is we're saying, let's get the land if we can get it, and if we sit on it for 10 years, 15 years, great. Who knows if we can, 10 or 15, if we can need a fire station, I don't know. If we can improve the dispatch, we'll never need it.
This is a little off topic, but why is it that when you call 911, you get everybody? I mean, it does not make sense that you get a medic, you get the fire department.
I didn't know what you
get-
meant.
You get literally.
There's a protocol based on what you say. Now, when I call, I say exactly what I want. I want a fire truck. And then they'll ask me 10 questions. Well, do you need a medic? No. Do you need police? No. And the reason I call is because the fire alarm in this building goes off.
well, we share that service with all of that county, right?
Well,
It's
it-
not our own.
The thing is, most average citizen does not know who to call. When you call 911, it actually goes right over here. We do our own 911 center.
Oh, really?
But if you're calling for medic, it gets transferred to a different dispatcher.
Okay.
And medic operates funny. I don't know if you've noticed, they don't actually have a station. I mean, they have one over behind Infinity, but they don't use it because the truck doesn't fit. So what they,
One down on 115.
no, they have a spot that they can park in.
Okay.
So they have spots all over the county that they park in, and they shift depending on who's on call.
Okay.
They're in constant shift mode.
Yep.
Do they just drive around?
So they're staged.
They just sit in the truck
They're
for
just
12 hours.
staged. It's like Morris Jenkins.
Wow.
I know.
Always staged for us.
And it's hard on the butt being an EMT.
So when in our neighborhood, when somebody has a medical issue, so you know they're calling to say,
Well, if you call and say, I'm having a heart attack, you're gonna get all three.
Yep.
Because what you're gonna do is, if there's a policeman close by, he's gonna respond because he's got an AED in his trunk. You're gonna get fire department because they're the trained EMTs, paramedics. And then the ambulance is who's gonna carry you to the hospital. Response time, you're gonna get the fire department first. The police are gonna respond if they're needed, and then the medic's gonna show up last. That's the way it works.
Fire is always first.
Yep. Over 60% of our calls from the fire department are medical.
They're
Right.
trained that way.
Yep, they are trained that way.
So we're starting to wrap up, 'cause we're almost out of time.
We can keep going.
I can,
All good stuff.
we're gonna really go at it next time. We're
Well,
really.
the
gonna-
Smithville one is, to be honest, we need.
Oh, we said we did it.
Yeah.
Well, we
I
do.
want to get it
And the thing about Smithville, we did just approve the plan
Yep.
for Smithville, so we will not be changing that.
Yeah.
But the areas around it will definitely be addressing, so I'd love to have it here for that, so that's fine.
I'll be honest, your design from 96, whatever, for this area, it's the first time I've ever seen it, it's kind of attractive.
Well, I'll have to say, they did a good job back then.
Yes,
Most people have no clue this exists.
exactly right. And I think that would be worthy of saying a potential vision or something along that line.
I like the idea of fronting 115, correct? It's hard, it's like I said, it's hard for me to get my head around.
That's a beautiful thing when you go down Davidson.
Yep.
That's one of those attractive things to it. Just like
I love the
down
fact
to
that they
talk
have
about
the
our
tree in
trees
there.
and those
Yeah.
small houses that are, that's
Maybe
another
we'll
beautiful
finally get it.
attractive.
Well, it definitely works, and it gives you more options, because if you are on Catawba with that building, you have to go down a 2-lane road,
Yes.
right? And on 115, you got some options, so, you know, we need to make sure when we're looking at this image is consistent with our long-term vision for the town. If it is, it's good, I'm not saying it's not, but we wanna go back through, you know, our vision, make sure that we're not forgetting anything. We really care about walkability, we care about a lot of things. We just have to make sure that we're consistent with our long-term vision and we can do it, right? And then let's take some of the pressure off the development. You know, if we go this way, the one thing we know is we might be able to take some of the pressure off of the development on Catawba, right? So it's really great. I like the way that looks too. So that'll be something that we can consider when we come back at this. I think as homework, I guess, in addition to what we've normally been thinking about and getting familiar with the area, let's think about if we did move the school, what would replace it? Right?
I'll be honest, I'll share my head there. I would want something community-centric for the folks at Smithville to have a place that they could utilize specifically for around there. It's been once.
And we can talk about what does that look like on the land use plan, and is that what we want? It's, you know, let's make sure, you know, let's get something down there, right? And then secondly, police department, same question.
We had some great ideas for use on that.
Yep, we did, right? So we're just gonna, don't forget, here's the challenge with all the civic use is for us to make those moves, part of the deal, part of the negotiation, is that cost of the value of that land is gonna offset the move and the ability to do it.
Correct.
So that you're gonna have to retain the value of that land. So we might have to come with some other ideas that'll provide the funding to enable that to happen.
Did you ever see a, overpass over 115 to connect, that's walkable, to be able to go across?
Footbridge.
No, yeah, footbridge, exactly.
It's possible, and you see it in other communities, it would be totally on our dime. So that's the thing, we've got to prioritize. And unfortunately, while those things look simple, they're very costly.
Is it cheaper to go under?
I don't know, I would have to investigate that. Huntsville is digging a tunnel under 73 from Burkdale across to the other side.
Because you see that, you see
We're gonna
tunnels
have to
under
do that
almost
at
more than
Westmoreland.
you do over
With
the.
no one builds.
Well, I mean, just think about it, you know, the beer garden's coming.
Yep.
And
Right.
with Kane and all of that, I mean, there's gonna be.
You gotta have something. You're
That
either
would-
gonna have to go over or under it. Now,
Yeah.
I think going over, you can make it look really good.
Right.
You go under, you're not gonna see it. So it just depends on
The
the
problem
cost.
with going over though, is we have some aged folks over there. If you do stairs, they won't be able to do it, so now you're gonna have to do ramps or an elevator.
Yeah, federal laws will require you to do the ADA ramps.
And you're gonna have to go really high,
Correct.
because you're gonna have to allow semis to go under it.
Yeah.
So at that point, probably gonna be going under it, which is fine, it accomplishes the objective. But I think you're dead on, we've got to have that. And that changes maybe some
then
of the things that you had talked about, if we have better access to parking with the bridge under.
But that also opens up space over there.
It opens up space over there, and it connects us and makes it more walkable
Yeah.
to your original. So,
I mean, that has been, that walkability in this town center has been key to every pitch that I've heard, and yet there's no plan to make it walkable currently.
right.
And so it seems like that's,
Well, if you widen that, is what they're talking about, it makes it a further challenge to be able to walk across. And so that's kind of what my thought was when it came into my head was, if somehow we don't have to worry about walking physically on the road, then,
that's
you
so
know,
true.
you can walk whenever and wherever you know, you're not having to worry about lights and all of that stuff,
need
and worry about them.
And then we avoid the problem that Davidson does have downtown.
Yeah.
People getting hit by cars.
Mhm.
Right.
It happens all the time.
Yep.
From my office.
It's so important.
I think that
to be
would
proactive
be a big
on
aid.
that. I think
Yep.
it would be huge, Ed, and I think, gosh, look at that, I mean, there is land right over there in the antiquity area. I don't know if it could be used for,
Well, there's a lot of good spots we could investigate. In fact, I wrote down, I'm gonna tell Kinley Horn as part of their evaluation, because pedestrian is transportation as well, to evaluate the underground part of it.
Right.
Just take a look at that. There's a lot of good spots from the intersection north. There's not a lot south, but there's a lot of good ones going north that we could look at to put a tunnel, so I'm gonna have them evaluate that.
I mean, I think it could make it look really nice too,
Yeah.
and kind of bring it, you know, because then you could have the pavers and you can put lights and stuff in there to like really make it kind of artsy as well. And something else you could maybe even do, truly, is have somebody, you know, hire somebody or have a local artist or local artist people paint it.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do some cool stuff. Like that.
yeah, really focusing on the arts nature of
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
thing. It begins to create, the difference between a village center and a town center is what?
Town center is it's like your downtown, it's like where your square is and where you have your government offices. Village center was meant to be kind of an equivalent on the west side, but not with government offices. It was meant to be walkable, it was meant to be commercial. Some of the mistakes, and I can say this since I wasn't here when it was done, West Catawba is not a walkable street.
No.
And, you know, we required entrances on West Catawba, but every business will tell you, nobody comes in that door on West Catawba. Nobody walks down West Catawba to come to my business. So that was a waste. So we need to revisit how we look at walkability of West Catawba and how we look at Village Center.
And I think of this as more village
Yes, I totally agree.
than the idea of a town center, which.
Well, and some of the
seems
things
like-
we've done over here, like not allowing drive-throughs. You know, we make people park and get out and walk.
Right.
Those are things that promote downtown feel. We don't allow big boxes downtown. We only allow small business, drugstore, things like that.
Well, would that then keep Big Lion from turning into a Big Lots once it's sold out? Or left?
No, because the building's there, and that's small for grocery store. This and Harris Teeter are both in the 35,000 square foot range. Those are small grocery stores. Most grocery stores today are 85,000 square feet. We wouldn't allow those. So we're trying to keep things small. But you can still have a big lots, unfortunately.
So, yeah, if we can add that on to the docket of
Okay.
preparation for the next time, because we're gonna really put the pedal to the metal. Next time, we'll have some other people here to help us too.
Mike says it's constant. We're really gonna dig through.
Hey, I'm giving y'all a break today. I didn't get a chance to give you a warning, because I wasn't here last time.
If you really want us to dig in, you gotta provide sustenance.
Obviously, I've got it. It's coming. The cookies are coming.
We're tired.
Hey, when we had cookies, we rocked, so I see the
We're all
secret.
hyped up on
I see the
sugar.
secret. But I'm excited that, I really appreciate you guys too. And
So I'm gonna get John all amped up and tell him that, you know, nobody wanted it.
It'll take much. It'll take much to get them going.